The phone call came at 6:47 in the morning. Michael Anderson wiped the grease from his hands, wondering who would call his struggling auto shop this early. "Is this the mechanic who helped my daughter yesterday?" The voice was authoritative, refined with the subtle edge of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "I'm Victoria Reynolds. My driver will pick you up in 30 minutes. Before Michael could respond, the line went dead. He stared at his phone, the screen returning to the image of his son's gap-toothed smile, taken last summer at the lake, before the latest round of bills had forced him to sell their fishing boat. Through the thin walls of their apartment above the garage, Michael could hear his 9-year-old son Noah still breathing the deep, innocent rhythm of childhood sleep. He glanced at the calendar on the refrigerator where math team tryouts today was written in Noah's determined block letters, circled 3 times in red marker. Not knowing this simple act of kindness would change everything. The thought whispered through Michael's mind as he looked at his grease-stained hands. Yesterday's encounter with the soaked, tearful teenage girl with the flat tire had seemed so ordinary, just another person needing help. But something in that woman's voice on the phone sent a cold finger of unease tracing down his spine. Victoria Reynolds. The name tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place it. Michael moved to the sink, scrubbing at the stubborn black lines embedded in his skin, a permanent reminder of his fall from engineering, grace to survival mechanics. The water ran, but the marks remained like the wedding band tan line that had finally faded 2 years after Sarah's death. 30 minutes. Not a request. An expectation. "Dad?" Noah appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up on one side, clutching the worn stuffed elephant that had been his mother's last gift. "Who was on the phone?" Michael forced a smile. "Just a customer, buddy. I might need to go out for a bit this morning. Mrs. Chen next door will stay with you until the bus comes, okay?" Noah's eyes, Sarah's eyes, studied him with that unsettling perceptiveness that sometimes made Michael feel like the child in their relationship. "Is it about the girl with the fancy car? How did you—" "I heard you fixing it when I was supposed to be asleep." Noah shrugged, climbing onto a kitchen stool. "You told her not to go over 50 on the spare tire." Michael sighed, pouring cereal into a bowl only half full to stretch what remained until payday. "Yeah, it's about her." He added the watered-down milk, another small economy Noah never complained about. "Eat up, champ. Big day today, remember, math team?" Noah nodded, suddenly serious. "Dad, what if I don't make it?" Michael knelt down, putting his eyes level with his son's. Sarah had always done this, met Noah exactly where he was physically and emotionally. "Then you try again next time. But with that brain of yours, they'd be crazy not to pick you." The sound of an expensive engine purring outside interrupted their moment. Michael glanced through the window at the gleaming black Bentley, now parked incongruously beside his battered pickup truck. "That's a $70,000 car minimum," he murmured, more to himself than to Noah. Noah's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" Michael's hand tightened on his son's shoulder. "No, buddy, nothing I can't handle." But something in his gut twisted with uncertainty. "Remember what Mom always said," Noah nodded solemnly. "Success isn't what you have. It's who you are when things fall apart." Michael finished. He pressed his forehead briefly against his son's. "I'll be back soon. Knock 'em dead at tryouts." The uniformed driver who opened the car door didn't speak, simply gesturing Michael into a leather interior that smelled of money and power. The seats felt too soft, too yielding after years of wooden chairs and the cracked vinyl of his truck. As the Bentley pulled away, Michael watched his son's face at the upstairs window, small hand pressed against the glass in farewell. "What have I gotten myself into?" The Reynolds estate materialized from the morning mist like something from another world, a sprawling modernist structure of glass and steel perched at the edge of a cliff overlooking the city. Michael had driven past this exclusive enclave many times, never imagining he'd be arriving as anything other than a service worker through the back entrance. The driver led him through glass doors that slid open silently across floors of polished concrete that reflected the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The austere elegance made Michael acutely aware of his oil-stained jeans and the worn flannel shirt he'd hastily buttoned over his shop logo tee. "Wait here," the driver instructed, the first words he'd spoken. Left alone in what appeared to be a minimalist sitting room, Michael's gaze was drawn to the wall of achievements, framed magazine covers featuring a striking woman with sharp cheekbones and calculating eyes, Forbes. Most Powerful Women placards, Innovation Awards, and suddenly it clicked. Victoria Reynolds, founder and CEO of Reynolds Technologies, the company that had revolutionized autonomous driving systems and recently expanded into aerospace. The company that had bought out Westbrook Automotive Design 5 years ago, leading to the restructuring that had cost Michael his engineering career. His hands clenched involuntarily, remembering the day he'd cleared out his desk, a photograph of a pregnant Sarah smiling up at him as he packed it away. 2 weeks later, they'd received her diagnosis. The timing couldn't have been worse. "Mr. Anderson," the voice from the phone materialized in human form. Victoria Reynolds stood in the doorway, somehow taller than expected, despite her slender frame. In her early 40s, she emanated the polished confidence that came from bending the world to one's will. Her charcoal suit looked like it cost more than 6 months of Michael's mortgage, her dark hair pulled back in a severe twist that emphasized her high cheekbones and penetrating blue eyes. "Thank you for coming." She didn't extend her hand, instead gesturing to a seating area overlooking the cliffside. "Coffee." "Sure," Michael said, the word feeling inadequate in this space. He settled onto the edge of a chair that probably cost more than his truck. Victoria poured from a carafe, her movements precise and economical. No wasted motion, a woman who valued efficiency. She handed him a porcelain cup so delicate he feared his calloused hands might crush it. "You helped my daughter yesterday," she stated, remaining standing. "Emma." "The girl with the flat tire," Michael confirmed, taking a sip of the coffee. "Complex and rich, nothing like the burnt offerings from his shop's ancient pot." "Is she okay?" Something flickered across Victoria's face there and gone too quickly to interpret. "Physically, yes." She moved to the window, her reflection ghosting against the panoramic view. "Did Emma tell you why she was in that part of town?" Wakel set the cup down carefully. "She said she was visiting a former music teacher who's moving away." "And you believe that?" "It wasn't my place to question her," Michael replied, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "My job was to help her get home safely." Victoria turned, studying him with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. "An admirable principle. However, I find myself needing to understand exactly who you are, Michael Anderson." She picked up a tablet from the coffee table, glancing at it briefly. 42 years old. Former senior mechanical engineer at Westbrook Automotive Design until our acquisition 5 years ago. Opened Anderson Repairs shortly thereafter. Son Noah, age 9, currently in 4th grade at Parkside Elementary. Exceptional academic performance despite limited resources. Her eyes flicked back to him, clinical and assessing. Outstanding medical debt of approximately $137,000 from your late wife Sarah's cancer treatments. Current credit score, 612. Monthly income approximately 40% below your pre-layoff salary. A hot wave of anger crashed through Michael, his fingers tightening around the delicate cup handle. "Is this why I'm here, for you to remind me of my circumstances?" His voice was tight, controlled. "I'm well aware of them, thank you." To her credit, Victoria didn't appear offended by his tone. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "You misunderstand," she said, moving to sit across from him. "I'm not judging your circumstances. I'm trying to reconcile them with your actions. You closed your business early, losing potential income. You helped a stranger. You refused payment. According to Emma, you were on your way to coach your son's baseball team, but delayed that commitment to assist her." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Why?" The question seemed genuine, as if Michael's basic decency was somehow a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. It struck him then that Victoria Reynolds, for all her success and power, might actually be confused by simple kindness without ulterior motive. "Because she needed help," he said simply, meeting her gaze. "She was a kid alone and upset. What else would anyone do?" The answer seemed to both satisfy and perplex Victoria. "You'd be surprised," she replied, a shadow crossing her face. "In my experience, people rarely act without calculation of benefit." Michael studied her more carefully, noticing for the first time the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes concealed beneath expert makeup. "With respect, that's a pretty cynical worldview. It's a realistic one in my position." She stood abruptly, moving back to the window. Her silhouette against the morning sun created a striking image of isolation. 4 years ago, there was a kidnapping attempt on Emma. Her father, my ex-husband, intervened. He was shot twice. Though he survived physically, the brain damage was significant. He no longer recognizes Emma or remembers their relationship. The revelation hung heavy in the air. Michael thought of Emma's unfinished sentence about her father, the pain evident even in what remained unsaid. The pieces of her behavior fell into place, the tracking apps, the anxiety about being late. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." Victoria's shoulders tensed, then relaxed slightly. "Few do. We've kept the details private to protect Emma from media attention and to avoid encouraging similar attempts." She turned back to face him, composure fully restored. "So perhaps you understand now why a stranger taking an interest in my daughter raises certain concerns." Michael felt a flash of indignation. "I didn't take an interest in your daughter. I fixed her tire and let her use my phone. And yet you made quite an impression in doing so." Victoria returned to her seat, opening a folder that had been sitting on the table. "Emma has asked that you handle all maintenance for her vehicle going forward. She's also expressed interest in visiting your shop to learn basic automotive maintenance, something she claims would be useful knowledge, despite having a full-time driver at her disposal." Michael was taken aback. Emma had seemed grateful, yes, but this level of impact from such a brief interaction surprised him. "Look, I was just doing my job, which brings me to my proposition." Victoria slid a document across the table. "Reynolds Technologies has multiple corporate vehicles, as well as employees' personal vehicles, that require regular maintenance. Currently, we contract with Prestige Automotive in the city at considerable expense and inconvenience. I'm prepared to offer you an exclusive service contract to handle all our fleet maintenance needs." Michael stared at the document, the proposed monthly retainer figure, causing him to blink twice to ensure he wasn't misreading. It was more than triple his current monthly income. The amount would not only cover his expenses, but would allow him to pay down Sarah's medical debt, rebuild Noah's college fund, and perhaps even hire additional help at the shop. It was in business terms a lifeline. But Michael couldn't help feeling there was more to this offer than simple automotive maintenance. Something in Victoria's carefully neutral expression triggered the same instinct that had saved him from countless bad deals in the past. "Why would you do this?" he asked, not touching the contract. Victoria's expression remained impassive. "It's a business decision. Your qualifications exceed our current providers. Your location is more convenient to our campus, and my daughter trusts you, a rare occurrence these days." The explanation sounded reasonable, logical even, but Michael wasn't convinced. This felt like something else, a way to monitor him, perhaps, or to create an obligation. "And if I refuse?" The question slipped out before he could reconsider. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, as if the possibility hadn't occurred to her. "That would be your prerogative, though I admit I'd find it curious to refuse an arrangement that would clearly benefit your financial situation and provide for your son's future." There it was, the subtle reminder of his precarious circumstances, the implied question of whether he could afford to turn down such an opportunity. For a moment, Michael felt the weight of Noah's future in his hands. This contract would solve so many problems, open so many doors that had seemed permanently closed after Sarah's death. And yet something in him resisted being neatly categorized as a problem Victoria Reynolds could solve with her checkbook. Michael stood, surprising himself with his next words. "Ms. Reynolds, I appreciate the offer, but I'd like some time to consider it. This feels complicated." She studied him with newfound interest, as if he'd just become a more complex puzzle. "You're not what I expected, Michael Anderson. I could say the same about you." The words escaped before he could filter them. For the first time, a genuine smile briefly transformed her face, softening the sharp angles of authority into something unexpectedly warm. "Fair enough. Take the contract. Review it. My number is on the card attached." As Michael prepared to leave, Victoria asked one final question that caught him off guard. "Your son, Noah, Emma mentioned you're coaching his baseball team. Are you any good?" The question was so unexpected, so disarmingly normal, that Michael found himself smiling. "Terrible, actually, but I show up, which seems to be what matters most to him." Something unreadable flickered in Victoria's eyes. Indeed, sometimes presence matters more than performance. She extended her hand at last. "I look forward to your decision, Michael." Her grip was firm, her skin cool against his work-roughened palm. As their hands connected, Michael felt a jolt of recognition. Not of her, but of a fragment of memory standing in the Westbrook conference room 5 years ago, presenting his design for a revolutionary engine cooling system to the board, a dark-haired woman in the back of the room watching with shrewd interest. The same woman now releasing his hand. Victoria Reynolds had been there the day everything started to unravel for him. She'd witnessed his career's beginning demise, and now she was offering its resurrection. Michael's mind raced as the silent driver escorted him back to the Bentley. Had she recognized him? Was this guilt money charity disguised as business, or something else entirely? As the luxury car descended from the hillside estate, Michael watched the city materialize below the same city but somehow different from this elevated perspective. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. Noah left for school, said to tell you I'll make you proud. Michael's throat tightened. Whatever game Victoria Reynolds was playing, whatever her true motives, he needed to consider the contract. For Noah. The driver cleared his throat. Sir, I've been instructed to return you to your shop, unless you'd prefer another destination. Michael looked out at the cityscape, at the invisible dividing lines between wealth and struggle, between power and vulnerability. No, he said quietly, take me back to the shop. Back to reality. Back to the life he'd built from the ruins of the one he'd lost. Back to the decisions that would shape whatever came next. As the Bentley glided through morning traffic, Michael's phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Thank you for coming. Don't tell my mom about my teacher. Please. Emma. Michael stared at the message, unease spreading through his chest. What exactly had he stumbled into? And why did he feel like he was being pulled into something far more complicated than a simple business arrangement? The Bentley turned onto a street, and Anderson Repairs came into view. The peeling paint, the hand-lettered sign, the modest reality of his post-Sarah life. A life that could change with a single signature on Victoria Reynolds' contract. But at what kicked on? 2 days later, Michael stood in his garage staring at the Reynolds contract on his workbench, still unsigned. The shop was quiet Wednesday afternoon, his deliberate slow period, so he could pick up Noah from school. The memory of Victoria Reynolds' penetrating gaze hadn't left him, nor had the unnerving sense that there was more to her offer than business convenience. The bell above the door jangled, and Michael turned, expecting Mrs. Giannopoulos, coming for her weekly check of her ancient Volvo's tire pressure, a ritual that never needed doing, but gave the elderly widow human contact she sorely needed since her husband's passing. Instead, Emma Reynolds stood in the doorway, her designer boots and cashmere sweater as out of place in his shabby garage as a diamond in a coal bin. Unlike their first meeting when rain and tears had marred her appearance today, she looked every inch the privileged daughter of wealth except for her eyes. Those held the same wounded wariness he'd glimpsed beneath the mascara streaks. You didn't sign it, she said without preamble, nodding toward the contract. Michael blinked. How did you? Mom's been checking every hour. Emma stepped further into the garage, her gaze sweeping over the organized chaos of his workspace. She doesn't have a lot of experience with people saying no to her. Michael wiped his hands on a shop rag. I haven't said no. I'm still considering it. Emma studied him, head tilted in an unconscious echo of her mother's evaluating posture. You were at Westbrook before, weren't you? When my mom's company took over. The question caught Michael off guard. How would you know about that? A smile ghosted across Emma's face. I Google people, especially people who help me without wanting anything in return. It's a rare quality in my experience. She moved closer to his workbench, examining the tools laid out in precise order, the one area of his life where Michael maintained perfect control. You were a senior engineer. You had patents. Why are you fixing cars in a garage now? The directness of the question, delivered without the cushion of social niceties, reminded Michael of Noah's unfiltered curiosity. Life happened, he answered simply. My wife got sick right after I lost my position. This, he gestured around the garage, gave me the flexibility to take care of her and then my son after she was gone. Emma's expression softened. I'm sorry about your wife. I'm sorry about your dad, Michael replied quietly. Emma stiffened, her fingers tightening around the strap of her designer backpack. What did my mother tell you? Just that there was an incident, that he was injured protecting you. She nodded, her jaw tight. That's her sanitized version. After a moment of silence, she asked, did she tell you why I want automotive lessons? She seemed puzzled by it, Michael admitted. My dad was teaching me before it happened. He said everyone should know how their vehicle works, that it was stupid to depend entirely on other people for something so basic. Emma's voice took on a different cadence as if quoting from memory. It was our thing. Sunday afternoons in the garage with his classic Mustang. The piece clicked into place for Michael. The teenage girl wasn't looking for automotive knowledge. She was looking for a connection to her father. His heart ached for her, recognizing the same desperate clinging to tangible memories that he'd seen in Noah. I'll teach you, he said, the words coming easily, whether your mother hires me or not. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. Really? Really? But Michael held up a cautionary finger. You need to be straight with me. No more stories about visiting music teachers when you're actually... He left the sentence hanging an invitation for her to fill in the truth. Emma's face closed like a vault. I don't know what you mean. Michael sighed. Emma, I've got a 9-year-old who tries to hide things from me too. He's not very good at it either. A flash of something, anger, fear, crossed her face, and for a moment Michael thought she might bolt. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked him directly in the eye. I need to know what really happened to my dad, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The official story doesn't add up. There are inconsistencies, things that don't make sense. Michael felt a chill that had nothing to do with the garage's temperamental heating system. What kind of inconsistencies? The kind that my mom doesn't want anyone looking into. Emma glanced toward the open garage door, lowering her voice further. I think that's why she wants to hire you. To keep an eye on me, to find out what I know. That's a serious accusation, Michael said, carefully studying the teenager's face. Was this adolescent paranoia or something more troubling? My dad was investigating something before he was shot. Emma continued, urgency threading through her words. Something at Reynolds Technologies. He'd been reviewing the company financials. He used to be the CFO before the divorce. He told me he'd found... She stopped abruptly as the sound of a car pulling up outside reached them. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows idled at the curb. Emma's posture instantly changed, shoulders squaring as she raised her voice to a normal volume. So anyway, that's why I'd like to learn more about how engines work. It would be really educational. The garage door framed a man in a dark suit, not the same driver who had transported Michael to the Reynolds estate, but cut from the same cloth of professional inscrutability. Miss Reynolds, he called. Your mother is expecting you for your college counseling appointment. Emma's expression flickered with frustration before smoothing into practiced compliance. Coming, Marcus. She turned back to Michael, her eyes conveying what her words could not. Think about the contract, Mr. Anderson. It would be a great opportunity for everyone. As she walked away, she paused at the door. My car's making a weird noise. I might need to bring it by soon. The emphasis on need was subtle but unmistakable. Michael watched the SUV pull away, Emma's face a pale oval behind the tinted glass before turning back to the contract on his workbench. The generous figures seemed to shimmer with new meaning. What had felt like charity now felt like something else entirely. A bribe, a leash. A way to monitor not just Emma, but now him as well. He reached for his phone, Victoria Reynolds' business card lying beside it. Before he could reconsider, he dialed the number. She answered on the first ring. You've made a decision, not a question, a statement delivered with the confidence of someone unaccustomed to waiting. I have, Michael replied, looking at the photo of Noah and himself that hung above his workbench, both grinning, fishing poles in hand, Noah proudly displaying a tiny perch as if it were a record marlin. I'll accept the contract with one condition. A pause follows. I don't typically negotiate terms that have already been presented, Mr. Anderson. This isn't about money, Michael clarified. It's about Emma. If she wants automotive lessons, I provide them. No questions asked, no reports back to you on what we discuss. The silence stretched taut with unspoken calculations. That's an unusual stipulation. It's non-negotiable, Michael said, surprising himself with his firmness. She's looking for a connection to her father through this. I won't turn that into a surveillance opportunity. Another pause, longer this time. When Victoria spoke again, her voice carried a new note, something almost like respect. You've spent less than an hour in my daughter's company, Mr. Anderson. What makes you think you understand her motivations better than I do? Because I recognize the look, Michael said quietly. My son has the same one when he pulls out his mother's old math textbooks. It's not about the subject, it's about the connection. The silence that followed felt weighted as if Victoria was reassessing not just his offer, but him entirely. Very well, she finally said, but I expect full transparency about the actual maintenance work in billing. Of course. The contract needs to be signed today. Michael glanced at the clock. I pick up my son from school at 3:15. I can drop it by your office after that around 4:30. That won't be necessary. I'll send a courier to the school. They'll wait for you. Of course she knew where Noah's school was. Michael shouldn't have been surprised, but the reminder of how thoroughly she'd investigated his life sent another ripple of unease through him. Fine, he agreed. I'll meet your courier at Parkside Elementary at 3:15. As he hung up, Michael stared at the signed contract in his hand, wondering if he'd just saved his business or sold his soul. The generous monthly retainer would eliminate his financial worries, allow him to hire help, rebuild Noah's college fund. But Emma's words echoed in his mind. I think that's why she wants to hire you, to keep an eye on me, to find out what I know. What exactly had the girl discovered? And why was Victoria Reynolds, one of the most powerful women in the technology industry, so concerned about what her teenage daughter might uncover? Michael carefully placed the contract in an envelope, his engineer's mind already mapping variables, calculating risks. If Emma was right, he just placed himself at the intersection of a family drama that could have dangerous implications. If she was wrong, if this was just teenage rebellion and conspiracy thinking, he risked losing a contract that would secure his and Noah's future. The shop phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. Anderson Repairs, he answered automatically. Mr. Anderson. The voice was unfamiliar male with the crisp diction of expensive education. My name is Garrett Phillips, Chief Financial Officer at Reynolds Technologies. I understand you're about to enter into a contract with our company. Michael's grip tightened on the receiver. That's right. I'd advise caution, Phillips said, his tone pleasant but underlined with steel. Ms. Reynolds can be impulsive in her business decisions, particularly where her daughter is concerned. Is there a problem with the contract? Michael asked, wariness crawling up his spine. Not at all. It's perfectly legal. I'm merely suggesting that entanglements with the Reynolds family tend to be more complex than they initially appear. A pause for everyone involved. The warning was clear, though its precise meaning remained opaque. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Phillips, Michael replied carefully, but I've already agreed to the terms. As you wish. The man's voice cooled several degrees. Welcome to the Reynolds Technologies family, Mr. Anderson. I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon. The line went dead, leaving Michael staring at the receiver, the sense of stepping into something dangerous intensifying. First Emma's cryptic warnings about her father's accident, and now this thinly veiled caution from the company's CFO. What had started as a simple act of kindness, changing a flat tire for a stranded teenager, was evolving into something far more complicated, something that sent warning signals flaring through Michael's instincts. He glanced again at the photo of Noah innocently grinning with his fish. Whatever was happening with the Reynolds family, Michael had just committed himself to being part of it, for better or worse. The familiar ping of his text alert sounded. Noah, did you sign the contract Mrs. Chen told me about the fancy car that came for you? Are we going to be rich? Michael smiled despite his unease. Not rich, buddy, he typed back. But things are going to get better. See you at 3:15. He slipped the contract into his jacket pocket and grabbed his keys, the weight of decisions made and consequences yet to unfold settling across his shoulders. As he locked the shop door, his gaze fell on the worn sign above it. Anderson Repairs, we fix what's broken. Some things he suspected might prove beyond his ability to repair. But he'd made his choice. Now he would have to live with it and protect Noah from whatever storms might follow. The courier at Parkside Elementary was another expressionless man in a dark suit who accepted the signed contract with a nod before disappearing into another anonymous black vehicle. Noah bounced beside Michael, barely containing his excitement as they walked to the truck. Is it true? He asked, backpack bouncing against his skinny frame. Are we really going to fix rich people's cars? Michael helped him up into the passenger seat, marveling as always at how this small human could simultaneously seem so grown up in his thinking and so vulnerably small in his physical presence. "We are," Michael confirmed, starting the engine. "I'll need to hire some help, make some upgrades to the shop. Can we get the roof fixed so it doesn't leak on rainy days?" The simple question and the awareness behind it of just how precarious their situation had been made, Michael's throat tightened. "Yes, buddy, we can fix the roof. And maybe cable TV again? For the baseball games." Michael ruffled his son's hair. "Let's not get crazy." Noah grinned, then his expression turned serious. "Dad, the girl with the flat tire, Emma, is she going to be your girlfriend?" The question caught Michael so off guard that he nearly missed the turn onto their street. "What? No, she's 17. Noah, she's a customer. Why would you even ask that?" Noah shrugged, looking out the window. "Mrs. Chen said the fancy car that came for you belonged to a rich lady, and that rich ladies always fall in love with handsome poor guys who are good with their hands. She watches a lot of TV." Despite everything, the contract, Emma's warnings, the cryptic call from Phillips, Michael found himself laughing. "Mrs. Chen needs to change her viewing habits," he managed. "And no, Victoria Reynolds is not going to be my girlfriend. She's my client, that's all." "Okay," Noah said, sounding unconvinced. After a moment, he asked, "Did I make the math team Mrs. Foster was going to post the list after school?" The subject change was pure Noah, his mind constantly bouncing between topics that interested him. "Did you check before I picked you up?" Noah's face fell. "I was too scared to look." Michael parked in front of their building, turning to face his son. "Want to go back and check together?" Noah bit his lip, then nodded. "Can we?" "Of course." As they drove back toward the school, Michael's phone rang. Victoria Reynolds' name flashed on the screen. "Hello, He answered, acutely aware of Noah listening beside him. "The contract has been received," Victoria said without preamble. "Your first assignment is tomorrow morning. My personal Tesla needs servicing before a trip to our Seattle office. I'll have it delivered to your shop at 8 a.m. sharp. I expect it ready by 3 p.m. "I'll need access to the diagnostic system," Michael began. "Already arranged. The access codes will be delivered with the vehicle." A pause. "Emma mentioned she spoke with you today." Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "She did. She's interested in learning basic maintenance." "So I've been told." Victoria's voice betrayed nothing. "I understand you've made this a condition of our arrangement." "I have." Another pause, this one stretching long enough that Michael wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Victoria spoke again, her voice softer, almost vulnerable. "My daughter and we haven't had an easy relationship since her father's accident. She blames me, though she won't say it directly." Michael glanced at Noah, who was making no effort to hide his eavesdropping. "I understand complicated parent-child dynamics," he said carefully. "Yes, I suppose you would." The professional crispness returned to Victoria's tone. 8 a.m. tomorrow, Mr. Anderson. Don't disappoint me." The call ended as abruptly as it had begun. Noah looked at him with wide eyes. "Was that the rich lady, Ms. Reynolds?" Michael corrected. "And yes, we've got our first job tomorrow." They pulled into the school parking lot, now empty except for a few staff cars. Noah's grip on his backpack tightened as they approached the bulletin board outside the main office, where club rosters and announcements were posted. The math team list was centered on the board, typed in neat columns. Noah stood frozen, unwilling to step closer. "Want me to look?" Michael offered. Noah shook his head, squaring his small shoulders. "No, I need to do it myself." Michael watched his son approach the board, so much of Sarah in his determined stance. Noah ran his finger down the list once, twice, then turned his face unreadable. "I didn't," he began. Then his expression cracked into a wide grin. "I made it second alternate." Michael swept him into a hug, lifting him off his feet. "That's my boy." As they celebrated, a sleek silver sports car pulled into the parking lot, stopping near them. The window lowered, revealing Emma Reynolds behind the wheel, her expression guarded. "Mr. Anderson," she called. "I was hoping to catch you. My car's making that noise I mentioned earlier." Michael set Noah down, the joy of the moment giving way to wariness. Emma's car trouble was clearly a pretext. "Emma, this is my son, Noah," he said, placing a protective hand on Noah's shoulder. "Noah, this is Ms. Reynolds." Emma's face softened as she looked at Noah. "Hey there, nice to meet you." Noah studied her with frank curiosity. Are you the girl with the flat tire? A genuine smile transformed Emma's face, briefly lifting the weight of whatever burdens she carried. That's me. Your dad saved me from being totally stranded. He's good at fixing things, Noah said with pride. He fixed Mom's car all the time, even though she said it was a lost cause. His voice dropped. She died, though. Dad couldn't fix that. The simple statement, delivered with a child's directness, hung in the air between them. Michael squeezed Noah's shoulder, his chest aching with familiar grief. Emma's eyes met Michael's over Noah's head, something like recognition passing between them, the shared understanding of irreparable loss. Some things can't be fixed, she said quietly. But it's good to have people who try anyway. She shifted her attention back to Noah. What are you celebrating? I could hear you guys from down the street. I made the math team, Noah announced, bouncing on his toes. Second alternate. That's awesome, Emma said, her smile genuine. I was on the math team in middle school. It's super fun. Noah's eyes widened. Really? You don't look like you'd be on the math team. Noah, Michael warned, but Emma laughed. It's okay, I know what he means. She winked at Noah. Smart people come in all packages, kiddo. Michael cleared his throat. You said your car was making a noise. Emma's expression shifted, the carefree moment evaporating. Yeah, it's a weird rattling, only happens when I make certain turns. She glanced around the parking lot, which was emptying, as the last few teachers headed home. Could you take a quick look? I'm supposed to drive to my dad's doctor appointment tomorrow. The mention of her father combined with their earlier interrupted conversation sent a clear message to Michael. This wasn't about car trouble. Noah, why don't you wait in the truck? Michael suggested. I'll just be a minute. Can I watch? Noah protested. I want to learn too. Next time, buddy, Michael promised. This will just take a second. Reluctantly, Noah trudged back to the truck, glancing over his shoulder with undisguised curiosity. Once he was out of earshot, Michael approached Emma's window. There's no rattling, is there? Emma shook her head, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I found something in my mom's office about my dad's accident. She glanced nervously at the school building, as if expecting surveillance. The police report says it was a random attempted kidnapping gone wrong, but I found an internal security memo that contradicts that. Emma, Michael began, a warning in his tone. My dad was investigating financial irregularities at Reynolds Technologies. She continued urgently, specifically in the aerospace division, which was under development when he was shot. He found something, Mr. Anderson, something big enough that someone tried to silence him. Michael ran a hand through his hair, the magnitude of what she was suggesting sinking in. Have you considered that maybe you're misinterpreting what you found? These are serious accusations. Emma's eyes flashed. I'm not stupid. I know what I saw. She reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a flash drive. This has copies of what I've found so far, including financial records with discrepancies that my dad flagged before his accident. She held it out, her hand trembling slightly. I need help, Mr. Anderson. I need someone who understands financial statements and engineering specifications. Someone my mother doesn't control. Michael stared at the flash drive, understanding, with perfect clarity, that taking it would irrevocably commit him to whatever dangerous path Emma was walking. His gaze drifted to his truck, where Noah sat waiting, innocently playing with the action figure he kept in the glove compartment. Emma, I have a son to think about, he said quietly. I can't get involved in corporate espionage or whatever this is. Hurt flashed across her face. So you're like everyone else. You took her money and now you're on her side. It's not about sides, Michael insisted. It's about being careful. If what you're suggesting is true, these are dangerous people we're talking about. People who allegedly tried to kill your father. Emma's jaw tightened. Then I'll do it alone. I always do. She started to roll up her window. Wait, Michael said, making a decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. I'm not taking your flash drive. That's too risky for both of us. But I will look at the Tesla tomorrow. If there's something unusual in the engineering or financial documents related to the aerospace division, I might spot it. Hope flickered in Emma's eyes. Really? Really, but Emma, be careful. Don't do anything that might put you in danger. And don't hide things from me if we're going to work together on this. She nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I won't. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. As she drove away, Michael returned to his truck where Noah was waiting with undisguised curiosity. What was wrong with her car? Michael started the engine, his mind racing. Just needed an adjustment. Nothing serious. Dad, Noah asked as they pulled away from the school. Are you okay? You look worried. Michael forced a smile, reaching over to ruffle his son's hair. I'm fine, buddy. Just thinking about all the work we've got coming up. But as they drove home, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just crossed a threshold into something far more dangerous than financial struggle. Victoria Reynolds wasn't just a wealthy client. She was a powerful woman potentially hiding deadly secrets. And he'd just agreed to help her daughter uncover them. What had started as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something much more complex and potentially lethal. The question now was how deep he was willing to go to uncover the truth and what it might cost him and Noah if he did. Tomorrow the Tesla would arrive, and with it perhaps answers that could change everything. The Tesla arrived at precisely 800 a.m., delivered by a driver who handed Michael a sealed envelope containing access codes and service instructions before departing in another waiting vehicle. The sleek electric vehicle gleamed in the early morning light, its presence transforming the modest garage into something approaching legitimacy. Michael ran his hand along the vehicle's smooth contours, appreciating the engineering, even as his mind churned with the implications of Emma's allegations. If what she suggested was true, that her father's accident was connected to financial irregularities at Reynolds Technologies, then the vehicle before him represented more than just an expensive car. It was a potential link to something dark and dangerous. Wow, no, Noah whispered, standing in the doorway that connected their apartment to the garage backpack slung over one shoulder. Math team acceptance letter clutched in his hand. That's the nicest car that's ever been in our shop. Michael smiled, determined to keep his concerns hidden from his son. Pretty impressive, huh? But you know what's more impressive, you making the math team. Noah beamed, but his eyes remained fixed on the Tesla. Can I touch it before school? One quick touch, Michael conceded. Then Mrs. Chen is walking you to the bus stop. Noah approached the car, reverently placing one small hand on its hood. If we fix enough of these, can we get one someday? The innocent question pierced Michael's heart. Before Sarah's illness, they'd been on track for a comfortable upper-middle-class life, not Tesla-level wealth perhaps, but secure. The kind of life where Noah wouldn't need to water down his orange juice or wear second-hand clothes. We'll see, buddy, he said, unwilling to make promises he couldn't keep. Right now, let's focus on keeping this one running for Ms. Reynolds. After Noah departed, Michael turned his attention to the vehicle using the provided access codes to connect to its diagnostic system. The engineering was exquisite cutting-edge battery technology, proprietary software, governing everything from acceleration curves to cabin climate control. As he worked, Michael found his engineer's mind engaging in a way it hadn't in years, analyzing design decisions, noting innovations, questioning choices. What had started as a routine maintenance check evolved into something more profound, a rediscovery of the intellectual passion he had been forced to abandon when Westbrook collapsed beneath him. He was so absorbed in the Tesla's systems that he nearly missed the subtle anomaly, a modification to the onboard computer that seemed out of place. Michael frowned, running the diagnostic again. There it was, a secondary processing unit that didn't appear in any of the standard Tesla schematics. It wasn't unusual for high-profile executives to have security modifications to their vehicles, but something about this particular setup triggered Michael's engineering instincts. He hesitated, then connected his laptop to the car's system, digging deeper. The secondary unit appeared to be monitoring and recording the vehicle's location data communications and nearby devices, essentially a sophisticated surveillance package disguised as a routine system component. Was Victoria tracking her own movements? Or was someone else tracking her? The shop door opened, the bell jangling cheerfully against the weight of Michael's discovery. Impressive, isn't it? Garrett Phillips stood in the doorway, his tailored suit and manicured appearance as incongruous in the modest garage as the Tesla itself. The Reynolds Technologies CFO surveyed the space with the calculated disinterest of someone accustomed to much grander surroundings. Victoria has always appreciated fine engineering. Michael straightened, closing his laptop with deliberate casualness. Mr. Phillips, I wasn't expecting company. Clearly, Phillips stepped further into the garage, hands clasped behind his back. I thought I'd stop by see how our new service provider is settling in. That's quite a vehicle to begin with. It's a remarkable piece of engineering, Michael agreed, watching Phillips carefully. Though I'm surprised the CFO of Reynolds Technologies would take time out of his schedule for a simple courtesy call. Phillips smiled thinly. I like to be hands-on with new ventures, especially those initiated by Victoria without the usual corporate protocols. He glanced around the garage. You've done well for yourself considering, from senior engineer to this. The subtle condescension in his tone pricked at Michael's pride. I manage. Indeed you do. Phillips approached the Tesla, running one manicured finger along its hood. I knew your name seemed familiar when Victoria presented the contract. You were behind that innovative cooling system at Westbrook, weren't you? Before our acquisition necessitated certain adjustments. Michael's jaw tightened. Adjustments was a sanitized term for the mass layoffs that had followed Reynolds Technologies' takeover of Westbrook. That was me. Phillips nodded as if confirming something to himself. Talented engineer forced by circumstance into manual labor. It's almost Dickensian. I fix complex machines, Michael replied evenly. The principle hasn't changed, just the environment. Quite. Phillips turned to face him directly, his cordial expression hardening into something more calculating. Let me be direct, Mr. Anderson. Victoria Reynolds has a tendency to make impulsive decisions where her daughter is concerned. This contract, generous as it is, represents one such impulse. Your concern is noted, Michael said, bristling at the implication. But the contract is signed by both parties. Phillips smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Contracts can be amended or terminated, particularly when the service provider fails to meet expectations. The threat was thinly veiled. Michael crossed his arms. Is there something specific you'd like to say, Mr. Phillips? Phillips maintained his smile. Just offering friendly advice. Emma Reynolds is a troubled young woman. Brilliant like her mother, but unstable since her father's unfortunate accident. She sees conspiracies where none exist, imagines villains lurking in boardrooms. I'm just here to fix cars, Michael replied, keeping his expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. How did Phillips know about Emma's visits? Was he being watched already? Of course you are. Phillips reached into his jacket and produced a business card, placing it on Michael's workbench. But should Emma approach you with concerns about Reynolds Technologies, I'd appreciate a call. For her own protection, you understand. Michael didn't touch the card. And if I decline, then you'd be doing a disservice to a troubled teenager and potentially jeopardizing a very lucrative contract. Phillips straightened his already immaculate tie. Consider it professional courtesy. As if on cue, Phillips's phone chimed. He checked it, frowning slightly. Duty calls. I'll leave you to your work, Mr. Anderson. Victoria expects her car by 3. At the door, he paused. Oh, and congratulations to your son on making the math team. Second alternate, yes, quite an achievement for a public school student. The reference to Noah sent a chill through Michael's body. The message was clear. We're watching. We know about your son. After Phillips departed, Michael stood motionless, his mind racing. This wasn't just about a service contract anymore. The veiled threat against Noah changed everything. Whatever Emma had stumbled upon it was significant enough that the company's CFO would personally deliver a warning. Michael returned to the Tesla, his earlier excitement replaced by focused wariness. The surveillance module he'd discovered took on new significance. If Victoria's car was being monitored, who was doing the monitoring and why? Working methodically, Michael completed the required maintenance while continuing to investigate the anomalous system. By early afternoon, he'd determined that the surveillance package had been professionally installed, but wasn't part of the factory build. Someone had modified Victoria Reynolds' personal vehicle to track her movements, record ambient audio, and monitor nearby electronic devices. The question was whether Victoria knew about it. As Michael worked, the pieces began shifting in his mind. Emma believed her father had discovered financial irregularities before his accident. Now, Victoria's car contained sophisticated surveillance equipment, and the company's CFO had just delivered what amounted to a warning to stay away from Emma's concerns, with an implicit threat to Noah. These weren't coincidences. They were connections. Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Reynolds. Status update on the vehicle. He stared at the message, weighing his options. If he reported the surveillance equipment, he risked alerting whoever had installed it. If he said nothing, he was withholding critical information from his client who might or might not be involved in whatever conspiracy Emma feared. Maintenance completed, he texted back. Would like to discuss an issue in person when you collect the vehicle. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. I'm sending a driver. Whatever the issue is, reported in writing. Michael frowned. Respectfully, this requires an in-person conversation. This time the response came quickly. I don't have time for this, Mr. Anderson. Submit your report with the invoice. Before Michael could respond, the shop door opened again. This time it was Emma. Her school day apparently finished early. She glanced around nervously before stepping inside. Emma, Michael said, lowering his voice, this isn't a good time. Your mother's car. I know why you're working on it, she interrupted, her voice tight with urgency. I need to talk to you. It's important. Michael hesitated, then gestured toward the small office at the back of the garage away from the windows. Once inside, he closed the door. Garrett Phillips was here earlier, he said without preamble. Emma's face paled. What did he want? To warn me away from you and your conspiracy theories. Michael studied her reaction. He also made it clear that he knows about Noah, about the math team. Emma sank into the office's worn chair, her expression crumpling. I'm so sorry. I never meant to put your son at risk. The genuine remorse in her voice cemented Michael's decision. There's surveillance equipment in your mother's Tesla. Professional grade. Not factory installed. Emma's head snapped up. What kind of surveillance? Location tracking, audio recording device monitoring. Whoever installed it has been listening to your mother's conversations, tracking her movements. It's them, Emma whispered, her face ashen. The same people who tried to kill my dad. Michael leaned against the desk. Emma, I need you to tell me everything. No more partial truths or cryptic warnings. What exactly did your father discover? Emma pulled out her phone, checking that it was powered off before speaking. My dad was the CFO of Reynolds Technologies before the divorce. He designed the company's financial systems. After he left, he maintained consulting privileges, supposedly to ensure a smooth transition, but really because my mom couldn't figure out all his security protocols. She took a deep breath. 3 weeks before the shooting, Dad called me. He was excited about something. He'd found a discrepancy in the aerospace division's R&D budget. Millions of dollars being funneled through shell companies for technology that didn't exist in any of the official development documentation. Corporate embezzlement, Michael suggested. Emma shook her head. That's what I thought at first, but it was bigger than that. 2 days before he was shot, he told me he'd traced the money. It wasn't being stolen, it was being used to develop something called Project Nightshade, something the board didn't know about, something my mother was hiding from her own company. Michael frowned. Why would Victoria hide a development project from her own board? That's what Dad was trying to figure out. He said he'd found references to military applications that weren't part of Reynolds Technologies' public contracts. Emma's voice dropped. The night before the shooting, he sent me an encrypted message. They're building it for someone else, someone who shouldn't have it. The implications were staggering. If true, Victoria Reynolds was potentially developing military technology outside official channels, a violation of numerous federal regulations at best, and possibly treason at worst. The official story, Emma continued, is that random kidnappers targeted me and Dad intervened, but I was never in danger. The bullets were meant for him, not me. And not random, the police report mentioned military-grade ammunition. Michael ran a hand through his hair, the magnitude of the situation settling over him. Emma, these are serious allegations. If what you're suggesting is true... I know how it sounds, she interrupted, but look at what's happening. Phillips threatening you, surveillance in my mom's car. None of that makes sense if this is just a troubled teenager's imagination. She was right. The pieces fit together too neatly to be coincidence. What do you need from me? Michael asked, making his decision. Relief flooded Emma's face. The surveillance equipment. Can you clone it instead of removing it? I need to know who's listening and what they know. Michael hesitated. That's beyond my expertise, but I might know someone who could help. Who? An old colleague from Westbrook. He specializes in cybersecurity now. Michael checked his watch. Your mother's driver will be here within the hour. I can't make changes to the surveillance system before then without raising suspicions. Emma nodded, her expression grim. Then we need another approach. She pulled a folded paper from her bag. This is the access code to the Reynolds Technologies R&D facility. Dad gave it to me for emergencies. It still works because no one knows he shared it with me. What are you suggesting? Project Nightshade has to be housed somewhere. The aerospace division has a separate facility outside the main campus. If we could get access— Absolutely not, Michael interrupted. Breaking into a secure R&D facility, that's not just dangerous, Emma. It's illegal. So is developing unauthorized military technology, she countered, or attempting murder to cover it up. Michael paced the small office. Even if everything you're saying is true, we need more evidence before taking risks like that. Let me start with the surveillance equipment. I'll document what I've found, reach out to my contact. Emma looked disappointed but nodded. Just be careful who you trust. Phillips knows you're working on Mom's car. If the surveillance is gone when she gets it back— I won't remove it, Michael assured her. Just document it. For now. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Driver en route. Estimated arrival 2:45 p.m. Emma rose quickly. I should go. Phillips can't know we've been talking. How will I contact you safely? Michael asked, realizing the complexity of their situation. I have a second phone they don't know about. She scribbled a number on the back of a service receipt. Only use this if it's urgent. Otherwise, we maintain the cover story you're teaching me about cars. As she moved toward the door, Michael caught her arm. Emma, we need to be smart about this. No rushing into dangerous situations, no amateur detective work. Promise me. Her eyes, so similar to her mother's in shape but warmer in expression, met his. I promise to be careful, but I can't promise to stop. My dad sacrificed everything to expose this. I owe him the truth. After she left, Michael returned to the Tesla, photographing the surveillance components with his phone before completing the service work. The driver arrived punctually at 2:45, another anonymous man in a dark suit who accepted the keys without comment and departed with the vehicle. Michael submitted his invoice electronically, making no mention of the surveillance equipment. Instead, he sent a careful text to his former colleague, Marcus Wong. Need to catch up. Professional matter. Secure line preferred. The response came an hour later. Kelsey's Diner, £7 tonight. As Michael closed the shop early to pick up Noah from school, his mind was churning with implications and possibilities. Either Emma Reynolds was suffering from paranoid delusions, or he had stumbled onto something potentially catastrophic, a conspiracy involving illegal arms development, attempted murder, in one of the most powerful technology companies in the country. And at the center of it all, Victoria Reynolds, the brilliant, enigmatic CEO who had just hired him to service her fleet of vehicles. The woman whose daughter was now pulling him into a dangerous investigation. The woman whose car was being monitored by someone with the resources and expertise to install professional-grade surveillance without detection. As he drove to Noah's school, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The ordinary sedan, 3 cars back, had it taken the same turns he had. The traffic camera at the intersection, was it rotating to follow his truck? Paranoia, he told himself. The first symptom of falling down a conspiracy rabbit hole. But then he remembered Phillips' casual reference to Noah's math team placement information that had only been posted yesterday afternoon. Information that required specific knowledge of Michael's movements and Noah's activities. He pulled into the school parking lot, scanning for anything unusual. Nothing seemed out of place, but the sense of exposure of vulnerability remained. When Noah bounded out of the building, Michael found himself moving quickly to meet him, ushering him into the truck with unusual urgency. Dad? Noah asked, noticing his tension. Is something wrong? Michael forced a smile. Nothing, buddy. Just a busy day. How was math team? As Noah chattered about his first meeting, Michael checked his mirrors repeatedly, taking a deliberately circuitous route home. If someone was following them, he wanted to know. Kelsey's Diner occupied a nondescript corner in a working-class neighborhood far from the gleaming towers of downtown. Its weathered vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lighting made it an unlikely meeting spot for former engineering colleagues, which was precisely why Marcus Wong had chosen it. Michael arrived at 6:55 p.m., having left Noah with Mrs. Chen after extracting a promise to keep the doors locked and not answer for anyone but him. The diner was nearly empty, save for an elderly couple sharing pie at the counter and a solitary figure in the back booth hunched over a laptop. Marcus Wong hadn't changed much in the 5 years since Westbrook's collapse, still wiry, still perpetually disheveled, still radiating the nervous energy of someone whose mind worked faster than the world around him. He looked up as Michael approached, a grin splitting his face. "The prodigal engineer returns," he said, rising to embrace Michael. "Man, it's been too long." Michael returned the hug, surprised by how good it felt to see a friendly face from his previous life. "Thanks for meeting on short notice." Marcus gestured to the seat opposite him. When the great Michael Anderson asks for a secure line, curiosity demands satisfaction. He tapped his laptop. "I'm running a signal jammer, by the way. Anyone trying to listen in electronically is getting a fascinating dissertation on muffler repair." Despite the circumstances, Michael smiled. Marcus had always been paranoid about digital privacy, a quirk that had seemed excessive at Westbrook, but now felt prescient. "Still fighting the good fight against digital surveillance?" Michael asked. "More than ever." Marcus closed his laptop. "After Westbrook, I went independent. Cybersecurity consulting mostly for people worried about corporate espionage." He leaned forward. "Which brings us to why we're meeting in this charming establishment instead of a bar with decent whiskey." "What's going on, Mike?" Michael hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. Marcus had always been trustworthy, but this situation extended beyond professional courtesy into potentially criminal territory. "I need information about surveillance technology," he finally said, "specifically vehicle-based systems designed to monitor location record audio and track nearby devices." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "That's specific, and not exactly in the hobbyist realm. We're talking professional-grade equipment." "Exactly. May I ask why a mechanic needs to know about high-end surveillance tech?" Marcus's tone remained light, but his eyes had sharpened with interest. Michael took a deep breath. "I found a system installed in a client's vehicle. Not factory standard. Professional implementation carefully concealed. And this client is, I can't say." Marcus whistled softly. "Must be someone important if you're being this cautious." He studied Michael's face. "This isn't just professional curiosity, is it? You're worried. Let's just say the situation is complicated." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right, I'll respect your boundaries. What specifically do you need to know? Can these systems be traced back to whoever's monitoring them? And can they be cloned so the original operators don't know we're accessing the data?" Marcus leaned back, his expression growing serious. "You're talking about intercepting a professional surveillance operation, Mike. That's not just technically challenging, it's potentially illegal depending on who's doing the monitoring." "I'm aware of the risks." "Are you?" Marcus lowered his voice. "Because high-end surveillance like you're describing isn't typically used by jealous spouses or corporate rivals. We're talking government agencies, military contractors, organized crime, people who take intrusions very seriously." Michael met his friend's concerned gaze. "I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't important." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Technically, yes, most systems transmit data to a receiver that can potentially be identified. And yes, with the right equipment, you could create a mirror that captures the data without disrupting the original feed." He frowned. "But Mike, this is dangerous territory. If someone discovers you're piggybacking on their surveillance—" "I understand the risk," Michael repeated. "Can you help me?" Marcus rubbed his jaw, considering. "I'd need to see the system first. Different manufacturers have different vulnerabilities." He hesitated. "This isn't just about technical curiosity for you, is it? You're protecting someone." Michael thought of Emma's determined face, of Noah's innocent questions about getting a Tesla someday. "More than one person. Including yourself, I hope." Marcus opened his laptop again, typing rapidly. "I can come by your shop tomorrow morning. Bring some equipment, take a look at what we're dealing with." "The vehicle won't be there tomorrow," Michael explained. "I only had access to it today." "Then we need another approach." Marcus thought for a moment. "If you can get me detailed photos of the installation close-ups of any serial numbers, connection points, transmission modules, I might be able to identify the system remotely." "I have photos," Michael said, pulling out his phone. "Not sure if they're detailed enough." As he passed the phone to Marcus, the diner's door chimed. Michael glanced up reflexively and felt his blood freeze. Victoria Reynolds stood in the entrance, her imperious gaze sweeping the shabby interior before landing directly on him. Unlike her usual impeccable business attire, she wore dark jeans and a simple blazer, hair loose around her shoulders, an apparent attempt at inconspicuous that failed spectacularly due to her commanding presence. Marcus, noticing Michael's expression, turned to follow his gaze. "Friend of yours," he murmured. "My new client," Michael replied quietly. "The one whose car I was servicing today." Marcus's eyes widened in recognition. "That's Victoria Reynolds, Reynolds Technologies." He looked back at Michael. "Mike, please tell me you're not involved in corporate espionage against one of the most powerful tech companies in the country." "It's complicated," Michael repeated, watching as Victoria approached their booth with determined strides. "Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice cool. "What a coincidence." "Ms. Reynolds," Michael acknowledged, his mind racing. How had she found him? Was she having him followed? "I didn't expect to see you here." Evidently. Her gaze shifted to Marcus, who was subtly sliding Michael's phone back across the table. "And you must be Marcus Wong, former cybersecurity specialist for Westbrook, now an independent consultant specializing in counter-surveillance measures." Marcus's surprise was evident. "You've done your homework." "I make it a point to know who my contractors associate with," Victoria replied smoothly. She returned her attention to Michael, particularly when those associations occur immediately after servicing my personal vehicle. The implication was clear. She knew exactly why they were meeting. Michael maintained a neutral expression. "Marcus is an old colleague. We were catching up." "Of course," Victoria's tone made it clear she didn't believe him. "May I join you? I believe we have matters to discuss that would interest Mr. Wong as well." Without waiting for an invitation, she slid into the booth beside Marcus, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. A waitress appeared, clearly starstruck by Victoria's presence. "Just coffee," Victoria told her. "Black." Once the waitress had gone, she folded her hands on the table. "You found the surveillance package in my Tesla." It wasn't a question. Michael saw no point in denying it. "Yes. And rather than reporting it officially, you photographed it and brought those images to a cybersecurity expert." Her gaze flicked to Marcus, presumably to determine who might be monitoring my vehicle and why. Marcus shifted uneasily. "Ms. Reynolds, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Wong," Victoria interrupted. "Michael discovered unauthorized surveillance equipment in my vehicle. Equipment I was unaware of until approximately 4 hours ago, when a routine security sweep of my garage detected transmission signals." Michael frowned. "You didn't know about it?" "Of course not." For the first time, a flash of genuine emotion crossed Victoria's face, anger quickly controlled. "Someone has been monitoring my private conversations, my movements without my knowledge or consent. The question is who?" The three sat in tense silence as the waitress delivered Victoria's coffee. After she departed, Victoria continued in a lowered voice. "I had my security team examine the vehicle. They confirmed what you found, Mr. Anderson. Professional-grade surveillance, expertly installed. Not government issue, they have more sophisticated methods, but high-end corporate espionage equipment." "You think it's a rival company?" Michael asked, watching her carefully. Victoria's eyes met his, her gaze calculating. "That would be the obvious conclusion. Reynolds Technologies has many competitors who would value insight into my movements and conversations." She took a sip of her coffee. "But I don't believe in obvious conclusions, Mr. Anderson, especially not when my daughter has recently been asking pointed questions about her father's accident." Michael kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. "I'm not sure I follow." "Don't insult my intelligence," Victoria said sharply. "Emma visited your shop this afternoon. After 5 years of refusing therapy, rejecting every attempt at maternal connection, my daughter suddenly develops an interest in automotive maintenance from a man she met once during a minor roadside emergency." Her eyes narrowed. "She's enlisted you in her investigation, hasn't she?" Marcus looked between them, clearly wishing he were elsewhere. "I should probably—" "Stay exactly where you are, Mr. Wong," Victoria commanded. "Your expertise may be required." She returned her attention to Michael. Well, Michael weighed his options. Denying Emma's concerns would protect the girl's confidence, but potentially alienate Victoria, who might be an ally, if she truly didn't know about the surveillance. Admitting the truth risked betraying Emma if Victoria was involved in whatever conspiracy the teenager feared. Emma has concerns, he finally acknowledged, about inconsistencies in the official story of her father's accident. Victoria's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened around her coffee cup. My daughter believes I had something to do with her father's shooting. She believes someone at Reynolds Technologies might have been involved, Michael clarified. She found financial discrepancies her father had flagged before the incident, something called Project Nightshade. At the mention of the project name, Victoria's composure cracked. Coffee sloshed over the rim of her cup as she set it down too forcefully. Where did she hear that name? From her father, before the shooting. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, her breathing controlled. When she opened them again, the vulnerability had vanished, replaced by steely determination. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Wong, I find myself in the unusual position of needing allies I can trust. It appears my company has been compromised from within. Marcus glanced at Michael. He said, Reynolds, with all due respect, this sounds like an internal corporate matter, one that might be better handled by law enforcement or, if I wanted law enforcement involved, Mr. Wong, they would be here instead of me, Victoria interrupted. What I need are individuals with specific skills who operate outside Reynolds Technologies' sphere of influence. She looked directly at Michael. You worked on advanced propulsion systems at Westbrook. Before that, you had defense contracts requiring security clearance. Michael frowned. How do you know about my defense work? Those projects were classified. I make it my business to know who I'm dealing with, Victoria replied. Just as I've made it my business to investigate every senior executive at Reynolds Technologies following the discovery of financial irregularities in the aerospace division. Project Nightshade, Michael said. Victoria nodded grimly. A development initiative that doesn't exist in any official company records yet has consumed millions in R&D funds over the past 3 years. She leaned forward. Funds authorized using security protocols, only 2 people could access, myself and my ex-husband, David Reynolds. But you didn't authorize it, Michael surmised. No, nor did David, according to the financial forensics I've had conducted quietly over the past month. Victoria's expression hardened. Someone has been using falsified authorization to develop technology under Reynolds Technologies' umbrella without board knowledge or regulatory oversight. Marcus whistled softly. That's impressive and terrifying. Indeed. Victoria's gaze remained fixed on Michael. When Emma began asking questions about her father's accident, I assumed it was part of her ongoing psychological struggle, her way of processing trauma. I never imagined she had actual evidence. She has more than suspicions, Michael confirmed. She has access codes, financial records, messages from her father. Codes that shouldn't still work, Victoria mused, unless someone wanted them to. The implication hung in the air. Emma might be being manipulated, led down a predetermined path by whoever was behind Project Nightshade. So what exactly are you proposing? Michael asked, still wary of Victoria's sudden candor. An alliance, she replied simply. I need to know what's being developed under my company's name without my knowledge. I need to know who's behind it, who authorized the surveillance on my vehicle, and most importantly, whether these elements are connected to David's shooting. And Emma, Michael pressed, where does she fit into this alliance? Victoria's expression softened marginally. My daughter hasn't trusted me since the divorce. After David's accident, that distrust calcified into something deeper. She believes I chose the company over their father. She met Michael's gaze directly. She trusts you. For whatever reason, she's opened up to you in a way she hasn't to anyone in years. So you want me to, spy on your daughter for you? I want you to protect her, Victoria corrected sharply. If someone at Reynolds Technologies arranged for my ex-husband to be shot for investigating Project Nightshade, then Emma is in danger by pursuing the same investigation. I can't protect her. Directly, she won't let me close enough to try my own. Michael considered this, weighing Victoria's apparent sincerity against the possibility of manipulation. And if I agreed to this alliance, what exactly would it entail? You continue the automotive lessons with Emma, giving you legitimate reason for contact. You keep me informed of what she discovers, what she's planning. Meanwhile, Mr. Wong, she turned to Marcus, would examine the surveillance equipment, determine who's monitoring my movements, and how extensive their access might be. And what do we get in return, Marcus asked, besides potential targeting by whoever's behind this corporate conspiracy? Victoria's smile was thin. Besides compensation commensurate with the risk, access to Reynolds Technologies' resources for your investigation, and my personal guarantee of protection should the situation escalate. Michael exchanged glances with Marcus. The offer was tempting but fraught with danger. If Victoria was being truthful, her resources could prove invaluable in uncovering the truth. If she was lying, if she was actually involved in whatever conspiracy Emma feared, then accepting her offer would place them directly under her control. I need to think about it, Michael said finally. Victoria nodded unsurprised. Understandable, but don't think too long, Mr. Anderson. Whoever is behind Project Nightshade has already demonstrated a willingness to eliminate obstacles. She rose from the booth. I'll expect your answer by tomorrow morning. After she departed, Marcus let out a long breath. Well, that was intense. You certainly have interesting clients these days, Mike. Michael ran a hand through his hair. It gets more complicated. The CFO, Garrett Phillips, visited my shop this morning, made veiled threats about my son if I helped Emma with her conspiracy theories. Marcus's eyes widened. Jesus, Mike, what have you gotten yourself into? I wish I knew. Michael checked his watch, suddenly anxious about having left Noah for so long. I need to get back to my son. Of course, Marcus hesitated. For what it's worth, I think Reynolds was telling the truth about not knowing about the surveillance, at least. Her reaction when you mentioned Project Nightshade seemed genuine. Maybe, Michael conceded, or she's an excellent actress. Either way, I've got decisions to make. Marcus packed up his laptop. Whatever you decide, I'm in. Westbrook survivors stick together. He gave Michael a grim smile. Besides, I've always wanted to investigate a shadowy corporate conspiracy with potential national security implications. Be careful what you wish for, Michael warned, thinking of Noah, of Emma, of the increasingly dangerous web he found himself entangled in. This isn't a cybersecurity game. Real people have been hurt. More could be. All the more reason to figure out what's happening, Marcus replied. Call me tomorrow after you've decided about Reynolds' offer. As they parted ways outside the diner, Michael scanned the parking lot, the street, the rooftops of nearby buildings, searching for signs of surveillance that would have been unthinkable just days ago. The ordinary concerns of his life, bills, Noah's school needs, shop repairs, seemed distant, now eclipsed by larger, more dangerous considerations. He drove home carefully, taking an indirect route, checking periodically for vehicles that might be following. Paranoia, perhaps, but after the day's revelations, caution seemed warranted. Noah was already asleep when he arrived, Mrs. Chen reporting that he had finished his math homework and read for an hour before bedtime. Michael thanked her, secured the apartment doors and windows, then stood watching his son's peaceful breathing for long minutes. Everything had changed, yet Noah slept on, blissfully unaware of the forces now swirling around their small family. Michael had promised Sarah that he would protect their son, provide him with opportunities, ensure his safety. Now those promises seemed in jeopardy, threatened by a conspiracy he barely understood, involving people far more powerful than himself. His phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number, did my mother find you? Be careful what you believe. Meet tomorrow, usual place, after school. E. Before he could respond, another text arrived, this one from Victoria Reynolds. Consider carefully, Mr. Anderson. Emma may trust you, but she doesn't know everything. Some dangers can't be faced alone. Michael stared at the two messages, the twin pressures of mother and daughter, pulling him in opposite directions. Emma desperate to uncover the truth about her father's shooting. Victoria claiming to protect her company from internal sabotage. Both potentially telling partial truths. Both potentially manipulating him for their own purposes. And at the center of it all, Project Nightshade, a mysterious development initiative worth endangering lives to protect. Michael moved to his cluttered desk, pushing aside bills and Noah's school notices to reveal his old engineering notebook. He hadn't used it since Westbrook's collapse, but now he opened it to a fresh page writing Project Nightshade at the top. If he was going to navigate this dangerous situation, if he was going to protect Noah and help Emma, while determining Victoria's true motives, he needed to approach it systematically like the engineer he'd once been. Gather data, identify variables, test hypotheses, Most importantly, he needed leverage information or resources that would give him some measure of control in a game currently dominated by billionaires and corporate conspiracies. As Michael began mapping the connections between the key players, Victoria Emma Phillips, the injured ex-husband, a plan started to form. A risky one that would require precise timing and Marcus's technical expertise, but one that might provide the leverage he needed. He worked late into the night, the engineer's mind that had lain dormant for years reawakening in the face of this complex, dangerous puzzle. When he finally fell asleep at his desk, the notebook page was covered with diagrams, timelines, and a detailed implementation plan. In the margin, he had written a single phrase underlined twice: trust no one completely. The next morning arrived with a sense of urgency that Michael hadn't felt since Sarah's final days. He prepared Noah's breakfast with mechanical efficiency, his mind still processing the revelations and dangers of the previous day. "Dad," Noah's voice broke through his thoughts. "You're pouring orange juice into your coffee." Michael blinked, realizing his son was right. "Sorry, buddy. Guess I'm a little distracted this morning." Noah studied him with that unsettling perceptiveness. "Is it about the fancy car lady Mrs. Chen says rich people always bring trouble?" Despite everything, Michael smiled. "Mrs. Chen watches too many soap operas." He ruffled Noah's hair. "Don't worry about adult stuff. Okay, you focus on being the math genius you are." "I'm not a genius," Noah protested, though he looked pleased. "Jason Kim got first place on the team, and he can do calculus already." "Well, you're a genius to me," Michael assured him. "Now finish your breakfast. Bus comes in 10 minutes. After seeing Noah off, Michael sent 2 carefully worded text messages. To Marcus, "I'm in. Need your technical expertise ASAP. My shop noon." To Victoria Reynolds, "Alliance accepted with conditions. Meeting your daughter after school is planned. Will report findings." To Emma, he sent nothing. Her warning about her mother gave him pause. Until he knew who to trust, partial disclosure seemed the safest approach. Michael was replacing a timing belt on Mrs. Peterson's ancient Honda when his phone rang an unknown number. "Anderson," he answered cautiously. "It's Garrett Phillips." The CFO's voice was smooth, controlled. "I understand you had an interesting dinner companion last night." Michael's hand tightened on the wrench he was holding. "I wasn't aware my social life was of interest to Reynolds Technologies." "Everything about our contractors is of interest, Mr. Anderson." Phillips's tone remained pleasant, but with an underlying edge. "Particularly when those contractors are consorting with Victoria Reynolds outside normal business channels." "Ms. Reynolds is my client," Michael replied neutrally. "We discussed vehicle maintenance requirements." "At a rundown diner 20 miles from either of your usual locations." Phillips laughed softly. "Come now, Mr. Anderson. We both know there's more to your sudden relationship with the Reynolds family than automotive services." Michael set down the wrench, focusing entirely on the conversation. "What exactly do you want, Mr. Phillips?" "The same thing I wanted yesterday: professional courtesy. Information about Emma Reynolds' activities, her concerns, particularly regarding her father's accident." "And if I decline," Phillips sighed as if disappointed, "then your contract with Reynolds Technologies would unfortunately need to be reconsidered. Additionally, certain financial institutions might receive information about irregularities in your business practices. Tax concerns, perhaps, the kind that might trigger audits, asset freezes." The threat was no longer veiled. "You're talking about fabricating evidence to damage me financially." "I'm talking about protecting Reynolds Technologies from potential corporate espionage," Phillips countered smoothly. "Victoria has become erratic since discovering certain financial discrepancies. Her judgment is compromised. The board is concerned." Michael processed this new information. If Phillips was telling the truth, Victoria's own board might be moving against her, which aligned with her claim about internal company sabotage. But it contradicted Emma's belief that Victoria herself was involved in Project Nightshade. "I'm just a mechanic, Mr. Phillips," Michael said carefully. "Corporate politics are beyond my pay grade. Yet here you are meeting privately with the CEO, consulting with cybersecurity experts, entertaining the conspiracy theories of a troubled teenager." Phillips' voice hardened. "Choose your side carefully, Mr. Anderson. Victoria Reynolds is not as untouchable as she appears." The line went dead, leaving Michael staring at his phone. The stakes were escalating rapidly. Phillips had just revealed that Victoria's position at her own company might be precarious information that could be valuable leverage or a carefully crafted lie designed to isolate her. One thing was increasingly clear. Reynolds Technologies was fracturing from within, with battle lines being drawn between Victoria and at least some members of her executive team. And somehow Project Nightshade was at the center of the conflict. Michael returned to Mrs. Peterson's Honda, completing the repair on autopilot while his mind worked through scenarios and contingencies. By the time Marcus arrived at noon, he had formulated a more comprehensive plan. "You look like hell," Marcus observed, setting a heavy equipment case on the workbench. "Rough night, you could say that." Michael locked the shop door, flipping the "closed for lunch" sign. "The situation's more complicated than we thought. Phillips called this morning. Threatened financial retaliation if I don't spy on Emma for him." Marcus whistled. "So we've got the CEO wanting you to protect her daughter while reporting back, and the CFO wanting you to spy on the same daughter while reporting to him." He shook his head. "Corporate politics are brutal." "This goes beyond office politics," Michael replied grimly. "Phillips implied that Victoria's position as CEO is at risk, that the board is concerned about her judgment." "A power play," Marcus mused. "Classic corporate coup strategy: isolate the target, question their mental stability, then strike when they're vulnerable." Maybe, or maybe Victoria really is unstable and Phillips is legitimately concerned about company security. Michael ran a hand through his hair. Without more information, it's impossible to know who's telling the truth. "So what's the plan?" Michael gestured to the equipment case. "That depends on what you brought me." Marcus grinned, opening the case to reveal an array of electronic components, tablets, and specialized tools. "The latest in counter-surveillance technology. If someone's watching, we'll know who and how." He pulled out a tablet. "But first, those photos you took of the surveillance package in Reynolds' Tesla." For the next hour, they analyzed the images Michael had captured, with Marcus providing increasingly impressed commentary on the sophistication of the installation. "This isn't off-the-shelf equipment," he concluded. "Custom-built military-grade components adapted for civilian application. Whoever installed this has serious resources and expertise." "Government," Michael suggested. Marcus shook his head. "Too crude for official agencies. They have much more elegant methods these days." He pointed to a specific component in one of the photos. "This transmission module is designed to send data through a proprietary channel. Very specific frequency range, heavily encrypted." "Can you trace it?" "With the right equipment, yes, but we'd need direct access to the system." Marcus frowned. "Without the Tesla, our options are limited." Michael considered this. "What if we had another vehicle from the Reynolds Fleet 1 that might have similar surveillance installed?" "Possible if the operation is targeting the company broadly rather than Victoria specifically." Marcus looked at him curiously. "Do you have access to other Reynolds vehicles?" "I will," Michael confirmed. "The service contract covers their entire corporate fleet. Phillips may have threatened me, but the contract stands for now." "Clever," Marcus nodded approvingly. "Use their own surveillance against them." "Exactly, but I need to know who to trust, Victoria or Phillips. Or neither." Michael checked his watch. "Emma's meeting me after school. She may have more information about Project Nightshade." "Be careful," Marcus warned. "If this really does involve illegal weapons development and attempted murder, you're dealing with people who won't hesitate to eliminate problems." "I'm aware of the risks." Michael thought of Noah, of the promises he'd made to Sarah. "But I'm already involved. The best protection now is information leverage I can use if things go wrong." Marcus began packing up his equipment. "I'll start developing a way to trace the transmission signals once we have access to another monitored vehicle. In the meantime, play along with both sides. Let Victoria and Phillips each think you're working for them. And Emma, she specifically warned me not to trust her mother." "Trust but verify," Marcus advised. "Gather information from all three sources, look for inconsistencies. The truth usually reveals itself in the contradictions." After Marcus departed, Michael reopened the shop, mechanically completing the day's scheduled repairs, while his mind working through contingencies and risks. The ordinary concerns of his business seemed almost comically mundane compared to the high-stakes corporate conspiracy he'd stumbled into. At 3:15, he closed the shop again, leaving a message on the answering machine that he would reopen at 500. The automotive lesson cover story with Emma required regular appointments that would impact his business hours, another cost of his growing involvement in the Reynolds family drama. He arrived at the park where Emma had suggested meeting, choosing a bench with clear sight lines in all directions, a precaution that would have seemed paranoid days ago, but now felt necessary. The area was quiet, with only a few mothers watching young children on the playground equipment. Emma arrived precisely at 3:30, dressed in casual clothes that helped her blend in with the college students who frequented the park's walking paths. She sat beside Michael, not looking at him directly. "We might be watched," she said quietly, pretending to check her phone. "My mom's security has been more visible since yesterday." "Your mother found me last night," Michael replied, matching her casual posture while keeping his voice low. "She knows about Project Nightshade, claims she didn't authorize it." Emma's hands stilled on her phone. "She's lying. Dad told me she was the one who initiated the project. That's why he was investigating. He found her digital signature on the authorization documents." Could the signatures have been forged? Maybe, but why would she suddenly care now, years after Dad was shot? Emma's skepticism was evident. "Did she tell you what Nightshade actually is?" "No. She claimed not to know, said it was being developed without board approval, using falsified authorizations." Emma scoffed. "Mumming happens at Reynolds Technologies without my mother's knowledge. She's pathologically controlling monitors everything, everyone, including you." A flash of pain crossed Emma's face. "Especially me. Ever since the divorce, but worse, after Dad's accident. Tracking apps, security personnel at school restricted communication channels." She met his gaze directly for the first time. "Did she ask you to spy on me?" Michael hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Yes, she says she's worried about your safety, that if your father was shot for investigating Nightshade, you could be in danger for doing the same." "How convenient," Emma muttered. "She gets to monitor me while pretending it's for my protection." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "I found this in my dad's personal files. He kept a hidden safe in our old house. Mom doesn't know about it." Michael unfolded the document, a technical specification sheet for something called a targeted electromagnetic pulse delivery system. Most of the details were heavily redacted, but the Reynolds Technologies logo and Project Nightshade header were clearly visible. An EMP weapon. Michael frowned, scanning the partial specifications. "This is military technology." "Exactly, but Reynolds Technologies doesn't have defense contracts for weapons development. They're authorized for communication systems, autonomous vehicle technology, civilian applications only." Emma's voice dropped further. "Dad discovered they were developing weapons under the guise of civilian projects, using company resources for unauthorized military technology." "Who would they be developing this for?" Michael asked, still studying the document. "Without proper contracts, they couldn't sell to the U.S. military." "That's what Dad was trying to figure out when he was shot." Emma reclaimed the paper carefully, returning it to her pocket. "He thought Mom might be developing it for private sale, to foreign interests." The implications were staggering. If true, Victoria Reynolds wasn't just guilty of corporate malfeasance, she was potentially committing treason. "Emma, these are extremely serious allegations," Michael said carefully. "Have you considered taking this to the FBI? With what proof, partial technical specifications, and my father's suspicions?" She shook her head. "Whoever's behind this has covered their tracks too well. We need concrete evidence connecting the project to its intended recipient." "And you think that evidence exists?" "It has to." Emma's determination was palpable. "Dad wouldn't have risked everything without being certain. He told me he had documented the whole operation, financial trails, technical specifications, communication logs. He called it his insurance policy." "Where is this documentation now?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out. Before the shooting, he told me he'd hidden it somewhere. They would never think to look." Emma's frustration was evident. "I've searched everywhere I could think of: his apartment, his office, our old vacation house." Michael considered this new information, trying to reconcile it with Victoria's version of events. "Your mother claims the surveillance in her Tesla was installed without her knowledge, that someone is monitoring her movements." "Maybe," Emma conceded, "but more likely she discovered someone else's surveillance and is using it to play victim, to manipulate you into trusting her." The cynicism in her assessment was striking and concerning. Emma's view of her mother was so fundamentally negative that she interpreted even potential evidence of Victoria's innocence as further proof of guilt. "What about Garrett Phillips?" Michael asked. "He's been pressuring me as well. Threatened financial retaliation if I don't report your activities to him." Emma's eyes widened. Phillips was Dad's protege. They worked closely together before the divorce. She considered this new angle. He could be continuing Dad's investigation, or, her expression darkened, he could be involved in Nightshade himself, using his position as CFO to hide the financial trails. Or he could be telling the truth concerned about corporate security and your mother's stability, Michael suggested, playing devil's advocate. Emma shook her head firmly. No one at that company tells the whole truth. Ever. She checked her watch. "I need to go. Mom's expecting me home by 5 for a family dinner with some board members." Her distaste was evident. "Be careful," Michael cautioned. "If what you're suggesting about Project Nightshade is true, the people involved won't hesitate to protect themselves." "I know." Emma's expression softened slightly. "Thank you for believing me, for helping." As she walked away, Michael remained on the bench, processing the conflicting narratives he'd been presented with. Victoria claimed ignorance of Project Nightshade and concern for her daughter's safety. Emma believed her mother was the architect of an illegal weapons development program that had led to her father's shooting. Phillips positioned himself as protecting company interests against Victoria's instability. All three couldn't be telling the truth. The question was, who was lying and why? Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Emma returned home safely. I trust your conversation was productive." Before he could respond, another text arrived, this one from Phillips. "The board meeting tonight includes discussion of vendor contracts. Your continued services depend on your cooperation." What did the girl tell you? The pressure from both sides was mounting, each demanding information about the other. Michael composed careful, non-committal responses to both, buying time while revealing nothing of significance. As he returned to his truck, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street, identical to the one he'd spotted near Noah's school yesterday. When he turned to look directly at it, the vehicle pulled away smoothly, disappearing around a corner. The sense of being watched, of being caught in the middle of something dangerous and expanding, intensified. Whatever Project Nightshade was, whoever was behind it, Michael was now firmly in their sights. He started his truck, checking the mirrors repeatedly as he drove toward Noah's school. His son's safety had to remain his priority, regardless of corporate conspiracies and billionaire family dramas. Yet even as he focused on Noah, Michael couldn't shake the engineer's curiosity that had reawakened within him. The partial specifications for the EMP weapon had triggered his professional interest. The technical challenges involved in creating a targeted electromagnetic pulse were considerable. Only someone with advanced knowledge of both electromagnetic field generation and precision targeting systems could develop such technology. Someone like the senior engineering team at Reynolds Technologies, or perhaps someone who had once been a promising engineer at Westbrook Automotive Design, specializing in power systems and electromagnetic shielding. Someone like Michael Anderson. The realization hit him with stunning clarity as he pulled into the school parking lot. He wasn't just a convenient mechanic who had helped Emma with a flat tire. He wasn't a random choice for Victoria's fleet maintenance contract. He had been selected, specifically, for his engineering background and expertise in the very technologies Project Nightshade would require. But selected by whom? Victoria Phillips. Some other player he hadn't yet identified. Noah emerged from the school building, his small face lighting up at the sight of his father's truck. Michael pushed the disturbing realization aside, focusing on his son's animated chatter about the day's math team practice. Tonight, after Noah was asleep, he would call Marcus. They needed to accelerate their investigation, determine who was behind Project Nightshade, before the circle of danger drew any closer to the one person Michael couldn't afford to risk. For now, though, he listened to Noah's excited description of geometric proofs, maintaining the illusion of normalcy, while the shadows of conspiracy gathered around them. Whatever happened next, Michael was certain of one thing: he had moved beyond being an unwitting participant in the Reynolds family drama. He was now a deliberate player in a game with rules he was only beginning to understand, and stakes higher than he had initially imagined. The question was no longer whether he would become involved, but how far he was willing to go to protect his son, help Emma, and uncover the truth behind Project Nightshade. And somewhere in the labyrinth of Reynolds Technologies, behind secure doors and firewalled servers, The project continued its development, a weapon powerful enough to justify attempted murder, corporate espionage, and the fracturing of one of America's most powerful technology dynasties. The Reynolds Technologies board meeting was still in progress when Michael's phone rang shortly after 9 p.m. Noah had fallen asleep an hour earlier, exhausted from math team practice and the excitement of his new position. Michael had been reviewing the partial specifications for the EMP weapon that Emma had shown him, his engineer's mind reconstructing the missing components when Victoria's name flashed on his screen. Mr. Anderson. Her voice was tight, controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension he hadn't heard before. I need you at the office, immediately. Michael glanced at Noah's bedroom door. It's late, Miss Reynolds. My son, bring him, he can sleep in my private suite. This is not optional. Before he could protest further, she added, Phillips has moved against me. The board is voting on my suspension, pending investigation into erratic behavior and financial improprieties. We don't have much time. The urgency in her voice was genuine. Whatever game Victoria Reynolds was playing, this part wasn't an act. Why me? Michael asked, already moving to gather his things. I need someone outside the company, Victoria interrupted. Someone not on anyone's payroll. Phillips has been more thorough than I anticipated. My security team has been reassigned, my access restricted. A brief pause. And Emma is missing. Michael froze. What do you mean missing? She left dinner early claiming a headache. When my assistant checked on her 30 minutes later, she was gone. Her tracking app has been disabled. The implications were clear and alarming. If Emma had decided to pursue her investigation alone, if she was attempting to access Project Nightshade directly, she was placing herself in extraordinary danger. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Michael said. He woke Noah gently, wrapping the boy in a blanket and carrying him to the truck. Noah mumbled sleepily, accustomed to occasional nighttime emergencies from Michael's years as a single parent managing Sarah's medical crises. It's okay, Dad, he murmured, nestling against Michael's shoulder. I can sleep anywhere. The trust in his son's voice sent a wave of protective determination through Michael. Whatever danger he was walking into, whatever complex game was being played between Victoria and Phillips, he would navigate it and return safely to Noah. As Michael drove through the night toward the gleaming tower of Reynolds Technologies, his phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, signal analysis complete, surveillance transmission encrypted but origin identified, call when safe. Another piece of the puzzle potentially vital, but no time to follow up now. The Reynolds Technologies headquarters dominated the city skyline, its distinctive curved glass facade illuminated against the night sky. Victoria was waiting beside the private elevator, her usual impeccable business attire replaced by what appeared to be a hastily assembled outfit, designer jeans, silk blouse, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The transformation was striking, making her seem suddenly younger, more vulnerable. You brought your son, she observed as Michael approached Noah, sleeping in his arms. You didn't leave me much choice. There was an edge to his voice, the protective father, overwhelming professional courtesy. The elevator ascended silently to a stunning penthouse suite that occupied the entire top floor of the tower. Michael gently laid Noah on a bed in the guest room. The boy curled into the plush bedding without waking his small form, a poignant reminder of innocence amid the gathering storm of adult corruption. Now tell me what's happening, Michael demanded after closing the guest room door. The full truth this time. Victoria moved to a concealed panel in the wall, revealing a hidden safe. From it, she withdrew a thick folder and a portable hard drive. Project Nightshade is real, she said without preamble, placing the items on a glass coffee table. But I didn't authorize it. David discovered it 3 years ago, unauthorized weapons development using Reynolds Technologies resources hidden within legitimate aerospace projects. Emma believes you're behind it, that David was investigating you when he was shot. I know what my daughter believes. Pain flashed across Victoria's face. David and our marriage ended badly. He convinced Emma that I chose the company over our family. When he found evidence of Nightshade, his first assumption was that I had initiated it. She met Michael's gaze directly. He was wrong. Then who did? Victoria gestured to the folder. That's what David was trying to determine when he was shot. His investigation pointed to someone on the board or in senior management, but he couldn't identify the mastermind. She paused. Until the night before the shooting. He called me the first civil conversation we'd had in months, saying he needed to meet urgently, that he'd discovered who was behind Nightshade and why. He never told you who it was. He insisted it had to be in person, said he had documentation proof that would blow everything wide open. We arranged to meet the next day. Victoria's voice caught slightly. He never made it. Instead, he was shot protecting Emma from supposed kidnappers who conveniently vanished after the shooting. Michael's engineering mind processed the narrative, searching for inconsistencies. If what you're saying is true, why didn't you continue the investigation after David's shooting? Why wait years to pursue this? Because I didn't know the full extent of what he'd discovered. Victoria's composure cracked further. David and I communicated through lawyers after the divorce. He never shared his suspicions about Nightshade with me directly, only with Emma, apparently. Bitterness tinged her words. After the shooting with David, unable to communicate and Emma blaming me, I had no idea what he'd found. All I knew was that someone had nearly killed my ex-husband, potentially to silence him. So what changed? Michael pressed. Why are you pursuing this now? Two things. Victoria opened the folder, revealing financial documents and technical specifications. First, our aerospace division has been consistently exceeding performance projections while simultaneously requesting additional R&D funding without corresponding product development. When I began investigating, I found the same financial irregularities David had flagged years ago. And second, Emma's behavior changed. She became secretive, started asking questions about her father's accident, requesting access to financial records. Victoria's eyes met Michael's. I had her under surveillance. Yes, I'm aware of how that sounds, but it was for her protection. My security team reported she was researching electromagnetic pulse technology, visiting secure areas of the company campus, accessing her father's old files. Michael's phone rang, Marcus calling back. He answered, putting it on speaker. Michael, where are you? Marcus's voice was tense with urgency. With Victoria Reynolds. What did you find? The surveillance signals from her Tesla, I traced them. They're being monitored from inside Reynolds Technologies, executive level. A pause. Specifically from servers registered to Garrett Phillips, the CFO. Victoria's expression confirmed she'd heard. Her face hardened into something cold and dangerous, a glimpse of the ruthless determination that had built a technology empire. Phillips, she said softly. Of course, David's protege, the one person who understood the financial systems well enough to hide a black-budget project. Michael returned his attention to the phone. Marcus, we need your help. Emma Reynolds is missing, possibly at the Aerospace Division's development facility. The Nightshade site, Marcus's voice sharpened. Mike, that place has military-grade security. If she's there without authorization... I know the risks, Michael interrupted, but if Phillips is behind the surveillance behind Nightshade and Emma is getting close to proof, the implication hung silently between them. Emma might already be in life-threatening danger. I need satellite imagery, security system, schematics, anything you can get on that facility, Michael continued, and I need it fast. Give me 20 minutes, Marcus replied. And Mike, be careful who you trust. After ending the call, Victoria was already at her computer. If Emma is pursuing her father's investigation, she might be trying to access the Aerospace Division's secure development facility. It's 5 miles from the main campus, isolated facility with its own security protocols. She pointed to a satellite view. Heavily restricted access. Even I need special clearance to enter certain areas. Could Emma get in? Not through official channels, but if she has her father's access codes, if they haven't been properly purged from the system, Victoria's concern was palpable. She's resourceful and determined. Victoria's phone chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, her expression tightening. The board vote is complete. I've been temporarily removed as CEO pending investigation. Phillips has been named interim chief executive. The speed of the coup was impressive and alarming. He's consolidating power, Michael observed, removing obstacles, including me. Victoria's voice was ice. And potentially Emma, if she's found evidence linking him to Nightshade or David's shooting. Michael checked on Noah, still sleeping peacefully, before returning to find Victoria loading items into a sleek backpack. We need to move, she said. My access to this penthouse will likely be revoked within hours. Phillips won't waste time. Where can we go that's secure? I have a property Phillips doesn't know about. purchased through a shell company after David's shooting. It's where I've been conducting my own investigation. Victoria led them to a hidden elevator different from the one they had arrived in. Executive escape route, she explained at Michael's questioning look. Exits through the building's service area, no security cameras. They emerged in an underground parking area where Victoria approached a nondescript sedan. We can't risk your vehicle. Phillips may already have it flagged. As they drove into the night, Michael's thoughts turned to what Marcus had discovered. If Phillips is monitoring your vehicles, your usual locations. That's why we're going somewhere he doesn't know exists, Victoria replied, her attention on the road. A property in the mountains, isolated, secure with equipment, will need to access the aerospace facility. She glanced at him briefly. I've been preparing for this confrontation longer than you realize, Mr. Anderson. Michael, he corrected automatically. If we're breaking into secure facilities together, we might as well use first names. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Michael, then. The property when they reached it was nothing like Michael had expected from someone of Victoria's wealth and status. Rather than an elegant mountain retreat, it was a utilitarian structure built into the hillside surrounded by a high-security fence with no identifying markers. My version of a panic room, Victoria explained as she navigated the security protocols at the gate. Established after David's shooting when I realized someone within my own company might be working against me. Inside was a space that looked more like a tactical operations center than a mountain cabin. One wall was covered with monitors displaying security feeds, financial data, and personnel files of Reynolds Technologies executives. Another held communications technology surveillance gear and various electronic devices. You've been busy, Michael observed, laying the still sleeping Noah on a bed in a small adjoining room. When he returned, Victoria was already changing into dark tactical clothing. There's gear for you as well, she said, gesturing to a cabinet. Michael raised an eyebrow. You just happen to have men's tactical clothing in my size. Victoria didn't look up from the computer where she was reviewing security schematics. I maintain equipment for various contingencies. The sizing is coincidental. But something in her tone suggested it wasn't coincidental at all. The unease that had briefly receded returned in force. Victoria, he said carefully, how much of this situation have you orchestrated? She stilled, then turned to face him fully. What exactly are you asking, Michael? The flat tire, and my findings, the service contract, this prepared safe house with equipment in my size. He met her gaze directly. How much of my involvement was by design rather than chance? For a long moment, Victoria simply studied him, calculation visible behind her eyes. Then she sighed, the sound unexpectedly human from someone who projected such careful control. The flat tire was genuine, she said finally. Emma's presence in that part of town was her own decision, visiting her former music teacher, as she told you. Your assistance was coincidental. She paused. What came after was not. Meaning I investigated you thoroughly after Emma mentioned your kindness. Your engineering background, your experience with electromagnetic systems, your financial struggles, all potentially useful. Victoria's candor was disarming in its directness. The service contract was deliberate. I needed someone outside Reynolds Technologies, someone with relevant expertise who might recognize anomalies in our vehicles, including surveillance equipment. You were looking for evidence of monitoring, Michael realized. You suspected Phillips even then. Victoria nodded. I knew someone had accessed financial systems using falsified credentials. I knew unusual technology was being developed within the aerospace division without proper board oversight. What I didn't know was who was behind it until you found the surveillance equipment and your friend traced it to Phillips. The calculation of it all should have angered Michael, being manipulated, positioned like a chess piece in a corporate game. Instead, he found himself respecting the strategic thinking even as questions remained. Why not go to the authorities, FBI, SEC, someone with actual jurisdiction? With what evidence? Victoria countered. Financial irregularities that could be explained as accounting errors, suspicions about a project that officially doesn't exist, concerns about surveillance that could be dismissed as corporate security measures. She shook her head. I needed concrete proof linking Phillips to Nightshade, to illegal weapons development, potentially to David's shooting. Without that, going to authorities would only alert him while accomplishing nothing. The logic was sound if cynical, Michael moved to the